Junior Saratoga is the executive officer. With me is Charlie Armstrong, a familiar face to all of you, I'm sure. He's come to us well armed with lots of good intel from CVIC. He's also brought a couple of tapes this evening. We'll see those in just a minute. First of all, let's talk about the day's events, Charlie. What has generated the tapes? What have we been doing?
Well, the tapes that we'll be showing here in a few minutes or so are some of the results of our recent bombing missions into the Kuwaiti Theater of Operations. Specifically, we're going to see some bombs hit a tank, an armor-type tank with a turret, which was hidden among some revetted positions. And the second clip is a couple of bombs hitting a petroleum refinery facility there. Both of these attacks have resulted in rather large explosions, which indicates real good success with the mission. We're continuing to fly bombing runs to Kuwait, taking as many Iraqi positions under fire as we can, and at night we're also flying F-14s and some Su-Cap aircraft trying to dig out those Scud launchers in western Iraq.
So really two major different kinds of missions we're flying now. Scud Cap that people have been hearing about, and that's primarily a night mission, I guess.
Yes, sir.
And then the attacks on the Kuwaiti Theater of Operations, the KTO, and that's primarily days.
That's both days and night, and there's a third mission in there, and that is we're flying a fighter escort for some other aircraft. Last night we flew fighter escort for some Saudis who were attacking some positions in western Iraq.
Well, we heard the captain talk tonight on the 1MC about some of the successes we've had over in the KTO, and we've been hearing a lot of talk about some of the successes we've had with Scud Cap, and from what I've heard, the last couple of nights have been pretty successful against the Scuds.
Yes, sir. We did have a launch the night before last. There were one missile fired, confirmed fire towards Israel. It either broke apart or failed in flight. It fell well short of Israel and ended up impacting in an unpopulated area in the West Bank. There were a couple of missiles fired toward Riyadh the same night. They were either engaged by Patriot missiles or fell harmlessly into the desert. The Iraqis are not having a whole lot of success with their Scuds right now. They know, especially in western Iraq, where we're flying the Scud Cap routinely now, that if they stay out in the open too long, setting up their launchers and trying to refine their fire control solutions, their chances of being waxed by some TAC-Air aircraft is significantly increased. So I think what we're seeing here in terms of the relative non-success of the recent Scud attacks has been they've been trying to rush putting the missiles on the rail and getting them out of there, and if that buys us some time and prevents the missiles from hitting where they're supposed to be, we're doing our job.
Well, it used to be that the Scud missile stuff was good duty, but now I understand people are trying to guard 3 out of that.
That's probably a reasonable thing to say.
The success rates I've heard over the last couple of nights, we're getting 1 or 2 a night, so we've got obviously we've had a little bit of a change of tactics, and whatever we're doing out there seems to be working. And these guys obviously like to set up and attack at night. They've been attacking at night since the war began, particularly against Israel, early morning hours, so that they can come out unobserved and launch in relative peace. And now that we're doing this night tactic, the Scud Cap, there is really no safe time for them to do it, and they're getting hacked. And certainly couldn't happen to nicer guys.
Yes, sir, that's true.
Well, let's go ahead and what are the film clips briefly again?
Okay, the first clip you'll see here is you'll see a small tank in the middle of a revetted position. There'll be a couple of bombs directed at him, and you'll see an explosion there. The second clip will be some bombs being directed at petroleum refinery facilities, some tanks there, storage tanks. This is infrared imagery, so it's sort of reverse. It's white on black, more or less, basically reflecting the heat signature as opposed to the regular color signature of the various objects.
So it's reverse light polarity, they call it, right?
Technical terms.
So things that are hot will appear as white.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, you fellas ready to roll them? Beautiful is right. This one's for you, Saddam. That's as good a explosion as we've seen. That was more. That looked like it was more than just the actual bomb going off, like the secondary at the same time.
That's now as we read the debriefs from the pilots who flew those missions. Now, one of the things you see underlined numerous times, secondary explosions, and that's always a good sign for us. I might add, this imagery was taken by FA-18 guys flying these missions. They're the guys who delivered this imagery for us here to watch tonight.
Okay, we'll show that again at the end of the show. What's happening in the air side? Any MiGs up today?
No, the air activity XO remains very quiet. We've been looking very hard at that. The Iraqis simply are not flying, and those who are not flying in the air very long, and they're staying away from all the Allied aircraft currently flying over Iraqi airspace.
How about the Navy side? I know the last few days, Ranger, TR, who else is over in the Persian Gulf?
Okay,
Midway.
well, we have Midway, Ranger, and Teddy Roosevelt.
They've been hammering away at the Iraqi Navy over the last, successfully too, I think, with some assists from British helicopters, British ships, and the Saudis as well. Everybody's been hammering away at the Iraqi Navy. Has there been any action today over there?
Well, the major action in the Persian Gulf came last night, and that was when the Missouri, in company with a frigate, steamed up into northern Persian Gulf and took some Iraqi positions in Kuwait under fire. The end result of that was they took out the suspected Iraqi command post. Upon completion of the fire support mission, both ships retreated to a little bit safer waters in the north-central Persian Gulf.
Yeah, we saw a announcement on the AP wire. Apparently General Schwarzkopf told the press today that the Iraqis are starting to move some of their command centers to schools to avoid getting hit, so maybe that's the reason why. Have you heard anything about that?
Haven't seen anything definitive about command posts being in schools, but we went into this campaign knowing pretty much where most of his major command and control facilities were, and as we all know, those are the first things to be targeted. We've had a great deal of success in striking these things, so it certainly makes sense he's looking for alternate places to establish his headquarters.
You know, it's interesting the Big Mo is in there. I saw Big Mo shoot those guns last year. I think she's got 9 16-inch guns that she uses for naval gunfire support there, and it's an impressive thing to watch. If you're inside a mile away from her when she shoots them, the shock wave alone can almost knock you down, and so it takes a lot to throw those shells out. We're talking about 2,000-pound high explosive projectiles. Shoots them over 20 miles. I've heard from the gun boss that they go up to 40,000 feet as part of their arc as they go out to their maximum range, and they've got pretty good accuracy. So it's an impressive setup altogether. I guess the fact that they've been able to get in as close as they have been tells us that we've cleaned out most of the patrol boats, the Exocet missile threat from some of the gunboats, and also the oil should be out of the way, it sounds like.
Yes, sir. On 2 points there. First, with the missile patrol boats, the Iraqi Navy, those guys who we haven't sunk already, are pretty much staying in and around the naval bases. Now we have established a barrier of some frigates, multinational frigates. The British are playing here as well as the U.S. And basically they're on the lookout in the northern Gulf for Iraqi combatants trying to escape from Iraq to Iran. And secondly, with regards to the oil, there still is a great deal of oil in the northern Gulf, but it's been there a while, and over time, due to wave action, tides, and simple evaporation, you get big spots in between parts of the slick. And apparently it's cleared up enough where they thought it was safe for the Missouri and the escort to go up there. By no means is it, has all the oil gone away, either sunk to the bottom or evaporated. It's still rather dangerous up there. But there's enough free water right now for her to go up there.
How about the airplanes? We lost any airplanes today, Allies?
I believe we lost an Army Huey helicopter went down this afternoon. I don't have any real details on that, but there has been continued fighting across the border between Iraqi forces and U.S. and Allied forces in Saudi Arabia. Just because there's no real incursion across the border does not mean that the harassing fire and the artillery barrages have stopped. Now that's continuing. It's been continuing now for a good number of days, and I expect it will continue for the near term.
Apparently it's the Marines that have the artillery that's closest. We keep reading reports about Marine artillery and that they're pounding away at the Iraqis using various kinds of projectiles, including phosphorus, projectiles and using what do you call a multi-projectile or something similar to Rockeye.
Yes, sir. What you do, it's like a cluster bomb for an artillery shell. Instead of making one big boom, we make a bunch of medium-sized booms, and it certainly wreaks havoc on anything it hits.
It's designed against both personnel and equipment.
Yes, sir. Yes,
sir. You mentioned last night, I think, or not you, but Second Commander Enger mentioned last night that we'd lost a B-52 off of Guam. Obviously not due to enemy fire, just flew into the water.
Well, it was a B-52 that was returning from a combat mission over Iraq. It was returning to Diego Garcia.
Diego Garcia.
Was where he was. Apparently there was some sort of a mechanical problem with the engines, which required the pilot and crew to shut down a couple of the engines. As they neared the island, they experienced a total electric failure, and all the hydraulics were lost, and they simply went in the water. The crew ejected. 3 of them were recovered right away. I don't have any further word on the other crew members.
Well, the AP wire said that a body had been recovered of one of the 3 missing crewmen. A total of 6 crewmen, apparently 3 alive, and 1 body recovered at this point. Interesting point, though, that for those people flying back to Diego Garcia, obviously it's a long ways down. It's below the equator in the South Indian Ocean. For those of you that have flown in there to meet a ship or for one reason or another, you know that it's at least 2,000 miles away from the nearest land. So it's a long, lonely trek out there into the middle of the Indian Ocean. And next, if they miss that island, next stop is Antarctica. There's nothing else between that and the South Pole. Saudis are reporting, once again, I get my word off the news, they're reporting that a lot of Iraqi vehicles were captured in the Khafji fighting.
Yes, sir. Now that the Iraqis have withdrawn across the border, Marines and Saudis and some of the other multinational guys are going through the area, salvaging what is still there from what the Iraqi forces left behind. A number of tanks, personnel carriers, things like that, a lot of weapons.
Up to 90 vehicles, I understand, about 10 or 12 tanks and all kinds of other vehicles.
Yes, sir. There's a formidable array of equipment that we're hauling back behind safe lines.
What other things do you have going on today, Charlie?
Okay, let's see. Looking here, in the overall picture here in the Kuwaiti Theater of Operations, the Iraqis are continuing to maintain essentially defensive positions. With the exception of the firefights that we just spoke about a few moments ago, we see no real indications of any Iraqi offensive anywhere along the border front right now. We're continuing to bomb them rather heavily. I look at the morning bombing plan, if you will, and the darn thing is 6 pages single-space long. So there's a lot of airplanes in the air flying over the country, dumping a whole lot of ordnance there, keeping the Iraqis awake at night and during the day. One of the more interesting statistics that we came across today was that as a result of the fighting in Ras al-Khafji, as well as our consolidated and rather concentrated bombing of the KTO, we've estimated, or the Central Command, Admiral Schwarzkopf's staff, has estimated that approximately 550 Iraqi tanks have been destroyed already. Now that sounds like a lot, but you have to realize that before this whole thing happened, the Iraqis had over 3,500 tanks there. So we've put a sizable dent to the approximately 15% of their tanks have already been taken out. We don't know how many others have been taken out inside bunkers or have been damaged beyond repair. But I guess a conservative estimate is that 15% of the tanks that the Iraqis rolled in there originally are no longer serviceable.
Well, I think the other point that we have to think about is that, first of all, that's a number that nobody can really confirm. And secondly, that these guys, as veterans of 8 years of trench warfare with the Iranians, know how to dig tanks in and protect them against artillery, which is not a great deal different than protecting them against aircraft attack. So even though we may have inflicted a significant amount of damage on them, that I think we have to assume that they've taken measures to protect what they've got.
And we've seen some of those measures. We've seen them doing better jobs in putting the tanks in revetted positions in bunkers and things like that, so they wouldn't be easily damaged by Allied airstrikes. It remains to be seen what the real extent of the damage is. Right now, like we said, CENTCOM has estimated that as many as 15% of them may be out of action right now.
How about terrorism? We're seeing a lot of little nickel dime stuff going on. So of course, if it happens to you, it's not nickel dime, but we're seeing a lot of relatively minor acts of terrorism going on, particularly in Europe, but also some in Latin America, a little bit in the States. And I think that there was a threat today that was on the AP Wire. I don't think you saw it on the Intel stuff yet, but AP Wire is carrying a story today showing that there was a pipe bomb, 2 pipe bombs discovered in an industrial complex in Norfolk, and they evacuated a square mile of the commercial area near the city of Norfolk itself. And so they haven't located where the bombs came from, whether they're terrorist motivated, exactly what's going on, but that's obviously a potential link there.
Yes, sir. And even closer to home, last night there was an incident in Jeddah where a bus was sprayed with some, I don't know what kind of caliber gun it was, but it was sprayed with gunfire by some unknown assailants. 3 Americans and 1 Saudi were hurt. I don't have any further details right now, but you know, you can see, you know, Jeddah is where we have a lot of our logistics comes and go from. We've got some guys there directly supporting Saratoga, and you know, right now, you know, we're seeing some elements of terrorism right there.
That's right. Jeddah is not only, it's one of our 2 main supply points right now. We get supplied from Sigonella, and it goes through Jeddah in Saudi Arabia on the one side, and on the other side it goes through Hurghada in Egypt. We've got Saratoga sailors in both places, and to help us get that stuff out here. Plus, we have a number of aircraft that are Navy aircraft that are flying missions out over Saudi Arabia that are there in Jeddah, that are maintained there. And there's an Air Force base. Air Force is using the Saudi Air Force base and a commercial airport there to fly missions out of. And last but not least, the 325th Tactical Field Hospital that the Air Force runs is there, and we've had a number of Saratoga sailors that go in and out. In fact, we've got several of them that are there right now. So anything that goes on in Jeddah potentially impacts Saratoga sailors.
Yes, sir.
Iran, let's talk about Iran right now. They've been making some overtures here, making some friendly sounds towards the United States, and perhaps trying to intervene as an intermediary. What do you think's going on?
Well, right now it looks like Iran is playing both sides against the middle. As we all know, they're currently harboring, sheltering, whatever term you want to use, a number of Iraqi aircraft, high-performance fighter-type aircraft. The number remains in the low 90s right now. The Speaker of the Parliament, Rafsanjani, who is a very influential and is also very pragmatic, and perhaps one of the more moderate voices in the Iraqi government, has made overtures to Washington along the lines that perhaps discussions with them in the middle between the United States and Baghdad could bring an end to the war here in the Gulf.
We're pretty sure now, aren't we, Charlie, that the aircraft that are there are not defections, but they're being kept there out of harm's way?
Yes, sir. That's the intelligence community's estimate, is that they've sought safe haven there.
How about the Iranians? Are they letting these guys fly back? Is there any two-way traffic across the border with these aircraft, or are they pretty much locked in, do you think?
Well, we believe they're pretty much locked in. You know, you see on any given day any number of aircraft cross the border. Now, that in and of itself is not real substantive, but for the most part, the fighter aircraft, the high-performance combat aircraft which have crossed the border, are more or less staying in Iran. You know, they're moving around periodically to get them from one base to another base, basically to make room at the original base, because one base cannot simply hold all these Iraqi fighters. But no, they're not freely going from Iran to Iraq and back again.
Look, we had a question the other night, as a matter of fact, about why we didn't do something to stop these guys. Are we flying any missions that are trying to intercept them? And I think the answer now is yes.
Yes, sir. We have, like we discussed earlier, we've got some surface ships on patrol in the Northern Gulf trying to intercept the surface guys trying to escape. We've been running some cap positions over the Northern Gulf there with an eye towards looking for these high-performance aircraft trying to escape. I believe a number of days ago we managed to splash a couple of Iraqi fighters in the process of trying to get away.
Just switch back to the tactical side here for just a second before we finish up. The captain talked tonight about the America is going over to the Persian Gulf to help out. What's the plan over there? They're going to have 4 carriers over there. We're going to have 2. What do you think drives that?
I think what may be driving that is the distances involved for ground support combat operations. Right now, as we're seeing and as we all well know on board here, each strike mission from the deck of Saratoga to the KTO and back again takes in excess of 6 hours. And if you're going to be doing that, you're not going to be able to put as many airplanes on station for any length of time. Basically, we're flying over, we're dumping our ordnance, turning around and coming back. You got 4 carriers inside the Persian Gulf where the distances are considerably reduced. Basically, you could fly single cycle strike missions into the KTO, come back, refuel, rearm, change crew, and go right back out again. They don't have the distances involved, and it's much more easier when you're doing ground support to have as many planes available as you need to help the guys on the ground.
Well, I have to assume that the Marines, who've got air facilities and Harriers and whatnot right up there near the Kuwaiti border, are in fact doing that themselves from land-based.
Yes, sir. They are using the Harriers a great deal. They're using their attack helos, and all of those things are being folded into one master attack plan.
Well, let's take a couple of questions before we finish up and show the videos again. What were the results of the Tomahawks fired by the Normandy? And certainly a lot of interest in the crew as we watch those things fly off. Have we gotten any results back?
The answer I'm sad to say right now is we don't have any definitive word. You have to realize that battle damage assessment is a time-consuming process. We don't have the facilities on board to do it ourselves, with the exception of the imagery we get from our TARPS planes on the F-14s. The facility, which we believe was specifically targeted by Normandy's Tomahawks, has been looked at, but it has not been looked at and completely analyzed since that launch. As soon as I see those results, we'll let you know what they were.
Well, I think possibly it's a function of the number of targets that there are out there, and a number of things that they can look at in the course of a day.
Sure, sure. With all of the sensors we have turned on and the intelligence collection emphasis for this part of the world right now, the guys back in the States are very busy. But right now,
we still have more targets being attacked than we can look at, though.
That's exactly it.
At any one day, at any rate. Here's a question for the intel officer. It says, any chance of Saddam hiding tanks and aircraft in religious sites that we're not supposed to fire on? I'd say there's probably a good chance of that, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. He knows that we're not supposed to bomb in religious sites and historical sites, buildings, things like that. And the shrewd man that he is, whatever works. If it involves hiding weapons and moving, we talked about it earlier, moving command posts to schools. That's just another example of the way this guy thinks.